Emily Elizabeth, and I'm the host of the What Fulfills You podcast, a show for and about individuals always seeking to be their best selves. On this show, we talk all about building the mindset, finding the right careers, creating meaningful relationships, and so much more. Welcome to the What Fulfills You podcast. Okay, well, Aaron, thank you for rushing here, coming on the podcast. I know you were, for context, you just came back from Brazil.
Correct,
literally
yeah.
like yesterday. So I feel like that whole, the energy of like getting back into the swing of things. That's why I was impressed when you were like, yeah, I can do Monday. I'm like, okay, sure.
No, yeah. I was like so technically my family, so my fiance and mother-in-law, fiance is from Brazil. Mother-in-law is coming here tomorrow morning.
Oh my God.
So it wasn't so much like, oh, I just got back, I need to do this. Yeah. It's like, oh, I gotta get the house ready to go.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. First time leaving Brazil, so it's like a big
wow,
big move.
Big deal. Okay. Deal. Yeah. Wow. Well, okay, definitely super grateful to have you on. I know this is something I remember when we had our first conversation in October when we met at my friend Allie's birthday. We just had like a really cool, deep conversation off the bat. So I was like, this would be good for the pod. So welcome.
Well, appreciate that.
First off, can you like paint us kind of like a picture of Aaron over the years, like from childhood to early adulthood to where you're at now, just to kind of like bring people up to speed.
All right. So I'm originally from the Midwest, Nebraska, actually. Just going to give you a quick perspective. Yeah. Nebraska is probably different than how you would really think about it.
Yeah.
I'm from a really small town, but a very diverse town.
Okay.
So I think that actually trajectored me like at a young age to really want to go places, be places, because I was around diverse people. When you think of Nebraska, you probably don't think that.
Interesting. So, okay.
But yeah, grew up there. I love sports like my whole life. Kind of in Nebraska, that's like all there is to do.
Right.
So, and it's like the cool thing to do,
I'd
say. So I played soccer in college for a little bit. Went to school in Nebraska. Knew, like growing up, my family lived in San Diego area and Florida. So we'd always go to one or the other, usually on like summer vacations. Yeah. Which really got me like wanting to leave. So I left as soon as I graduated college. I moved to California. Okay. I was in California about 8 years.
Oh, nice.
Maybe 9.
Okay.
And that's where I met my current fiance. Yeah. I kind of lived everywhere in California. I lived in the Central Valley at first. Okay. Which is more more country than Nebraska, technically. Yeah. Then I lived in the Bay Area for about 5 years, and then I lived in LA for like 2. So yeah, I think that completes 8. So like 1 year in Central Valley, and then Northern California, Southern. Yeah. So yeah. Yeah. I would say I've always worked in sports. That's probably I loved sports for a long time. Now I don't really work in sports. I kind of left. Yeah. I had like more, the more you travel. I've been in a lot of places in the world. I have a huge knack for that. That's what I would say is like every time I go somewhere, I come back from somewhere, I feel different, which I like. Gives me more perspective, more grateful for what I have, what I'm going through. All those situations. So for sure. Even coming back from Brazil, been there before, but it's great to come home. Yeah, no, I feel the same way too. I mean, I was obviously in Colombia for the first time, like recently. And so I think it definitely expanded my mind because most of my experience has been all over Europe, but I've never been to South America. So that's why I was like super stoked. And I told you, we talked like before I left too. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to like Medellin for the first time. And I don't know what to expect. How's the reggaeton? It was great. It was great. I mean, it was such a vibe, so I was like having fun. But yeah, anyways, I do want to dive into a topic we hit it off on the first time we met, which is around timing and relationships and kind of the correlation of that. Because I think it's something I was kind of pondering myself around for men specifically, and then you kind of had your whole spiel about it. I don't know if it was because we were all a little wine drunk or something, right? I don't know, but we were like going off on it, and I think I was really curious about, and at the time you articulated it too. But what are your thoughts on, specifically for men, on like the relation of time and their ability to be in a relationship? And so timing for them, and maybe there's more details from your experience, but maybe that's like from a financial level or like mental stability level or just like
personal groundedness, like whatever that looks like, because you obviously have a lot more male friends than I do, so you can observe that as well. But I'm kind of curious, like, what's your take on that? Because I think you alluded to that being a big part into how you were able to kind of quote unquote feel more ready when you met your now fiance. Yeah.
No, great question. Well, first and foremost, I think like men just mature at a slower rate than women. Socially, right? And that goes back when women mature faster, they date older men, you know, stuff like that. Even the freshman dating the senior. It doesn't really happen for like a male, from a male perspective. But that really, you know, through time, that compiles and like experiences grow people and mature faster. So like the 22-year-old female is different than the 22-year-old male. Right. So yeah, it's super interesting. I would say most men, they're not able to experience as much things probably as women. If you're a 22-year-old female and you're dating like an older man, you're gonna have a different experience than if you're dating like a dude that's at the college bars, 100%. Like buying buckets of beers for whatever, $15, you know? So I'd say that has a huge thing to do with it. I think every male has a different journey though, like on that timeline, right? I feel that I'm in a further place than I would say majority of men in my age. 31. Just but even then, like I felt like I was more mature at like the age of 26. And I think that comes from different experiences that I had in my career, as well as like traveling. And all those things just help grow you and you feel a little more grounded. I think ultimately all those timing pieces, most people don't know what they want. Right. And you may never, like it's a constant chase, right? You're always chasing what you want to do and who you want to be with, that ever evolves. But I would say the more experiences you have, the more growth you have. And that's kind of when it comes to timing and stuff like that. So does that answer?
I'm thinking, do you feel like you knew or like had a strong idea of what you wanted when you were in your late 20s?
I wouldn't say, I wasn't like, oh man, I gotta find a wife or a fiance. I definitely did. I knew the lifestyle that I wanted to live. I knew like the person that I wanted to be and the lifestyle that I wanted to live. That can change through different careers, right? But I knew the trajectory of who I wanted to be as a person, as well as the lifestyle I wanted to live. So sometimes it takes tasting all those things to 100%. Be able to really move into the next step. And I feel like you have to complete certain things to be able to move forward in other areas. So like relationships, friendships, like work, all these different things, if they're in like a different kind of like level, almost, like verticals, it's kind of like different verticals, right? And the more verticals you like hit different experiences, you wouldn't think this, but it helps out all the other verticals. It does. And I think it's interesting. Well, I feel like within female social circles, some of the conversations are often around, you know, kind of gearing about like men and their dating habits. Maybe let's just hone it down into New York, right? A lot of them are often saying, you know, guys don't know what they want, or they're just not like delivering things that maybe women perceive that they should be able to do so. And for me, I've always thought, well, I think part of it is because they're not as clear on what they want, but partially because of, I don't know, like maybe their inability to leave their fucking around phase. And mind you, I've told you before, a lot of guys I've dated in the past were, you know, in their early mid 30s and definitely a little bit of an age gap there. But even that, I still saw it present regardless of age, right? So I asked you this at coffee a couple weeks ago, but like, I'm super curious, why do you think some men, maybe even if they're like successful in their career, right? So that's like one vertical, like they're doing well in, but then they're still not doing so great in this relationship aspect, whether it's I'll explain. So one thing I haven't said yet is I'm gonna call it a macho complex. Like there's like, I'm the man, right? And every guy, whether they would admit to it or not, probably has this like kind of want to be the man-esque feeling inside of them. And I think it comes down to like success. There's a lot of different factors to get there. Right. So through that like macho complex, what I'm trying to get to is you'll see different men that, you know, they might not be ready to settle down. They're always like trying to think what's next, what's better. Men think about their like male counterpart relationships probably more than like females do, I feel like. And I'm just saying male, female. Just But they definitely, how would I say this? I think they know, or they try to impress their friends more than females might.
Okay.
Or
interesting.
Something you might know. It's like kind of under the radar. Yeah.
Okay, but that definitely is not as frequent in females. Like I feel like girls more often, whether they like to admit it or not, but from a subconscious level, when you're either doing it for yourself genuinely, like when you're like dressing well and like looking good, and I think half the time a lot of secure women do it for themselves, right? Yeah. But then on the other end of the spectrum, where from a subconscious level, women who are not as secure yet are doing it to get attention.
For sure.
Right.
Well, and that's the thing. So if a man like says, no, I love this woman, I'm going to be with her. He's like letting that macho complex down to all of his friends, right?
Okay.
Think about it this way. We're in like a great space that we're always constantly developing. And like the culture in America is more open than it's ever been, right? Which is fantastic.
Right.
So you even think about like when I grew up in the 90s. Yeah. And you would do something and your friends would call you like whipped.
Right.
Or even if like you had like a couple of my friends that were gay or something, and you'd be like, oh, like they would say that and that was like insulting.
Yes.
You know, so you have to think of those 10, 15, 20 years that they like went through that all compiled, and it takes a lot of work, actual work to get rid of that. And
that is so true. Yeah. Okay, I'm curious because what you said there of like, oh, like when the like that just triggered me to think about that question or thought of, do men, like, do they just know when they meet the right woman? Or do you think that's kind of like too much of a black and white statement? I don't know if you've ever heard that thrown around before, but like sometimes people often say like men just know, whereas like women sometimes can come around, I guess, right? But I mean, considering you are, you know, locked in, right? Or you have a fiance, right? But, like, I'm kind of curious if do you, and maybe you've observed other successful, you know, men as well who also have a long-term partner. Do you think that's the case? Do you think it's a little bit of that plus a little bit more practical things?
Well, you'll also see men that like fall in love, like their first kind of their first time they're like letting down that barrier,
right?
And that relationship might not be compatible, but they're like,
totally,
I love that person, I'm going to try to be with them forever. But they actually might not be. You see that all the time. Like even younger men will like fall in love, I'd say, and then they get married at like a younger age. Yeah. And then later on in life, but I think that's because they're not like fully developed experiencing. Right. I don't know if there's like a guideline of what you all need to experience in life. There's definitely not. But I think the more you know and confidently who you are, right, the better you're going to be in a relationship. I think it has more to do with them internally than...
So true. So are we saying that men often... No, I'm kidding. But actually, though, are we saying then that, like, maybe for the girls listening out there who do maybe often kind of think, like, there's just something not hitting with some of the guys they're dating, right? Is it fair to say maybe that most of them just are not well developed within themselves yet be able to show up as like feasible partners?
Yes, for sure. Yeah. For sure. I mean, everyone has insecurities, right? Right. 100%. But I'm sure like more men probably mask those than the counter. So that's what I would,
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, right? I'm going to be honest. Like, I think that's why a part of me from 2-3 years ago started to approach dating older guys, partially for that reason, where to me, there's a higher chance they would be more developed by, you know, early mid 30s. Obviously, that's not the case at all. I mean, I think it's just per person's like ability to grow on their own and to be able to like learn from their life experiences and to internalize that. But yeah, I would say on the record, I definitely don't think there's a correlation with their age as much as one would naturally think. But I do think it's important that maybe, I guess, for the girls listening, that sometimes it's just that us females, we might be more developed and then the guys are just not, you know, and I think
more confident in what you want.
Right.
You know? Like if you're developed and you know, like, these are what I want, X, Y, Z in my life. Yeah. Which I feel like women might know before men know. Right. Then there's going to be like roadblocks. Yeah. So.
Have you ever solo traveled?
Yes.
Like internationally?
Yeah.
Oh, you did? Oh, okay. Sure. See, that kind of explains it, right? Because I'm sitting here thinking, like, what are some of the things that Aaron did that might have like developed him more as a person that I can say for sure like a lot of guys I know within 5 years of your age, like haven't done before, right? Like I know plenty of guys that have only lived in New York and Miami, for example, and like could never, I don't know, like do a solo trip to South America or even solo trip to Europe, right? That's like basic things, but that does change you as you know with travel, right? But that's one thing to travel with your guys, to do it in a luxury way. It's another thing to do it in a solo way where you have to learn how to be on your feet and learn how to speak briefly in another language, like things like that. Because I think that just makes
even just shows like how many people are comfortable just being by themselves.
Yeah.
Probably small amount.
That's true. You know? That's like, true.
How comfortable are people just staying content in like one space without being around other people? Makes solitude,
right? Exactly. I think that a lot of people, I mean, again, girls as well, but like especially the guys, I think that's part of maybe where, from my observation, like the lack of full development is like they haven't had like their own like me time to like understand themselves.
Well, and I think it comes in a lot of different ways though, because I've solo traveled. I've experienced like, we'll just say Europe, because you said you've been to Europe. I've been to Europe maybe 5 times.
Okay.
But I've had a different level of experience out of all the 5. Like I know how I want to experience Europe now. It's very similar to how I did the last time. That's how I plan to experience it moving forward.
Yeah.
But I've done it like in college, like you have no money, right? Then I've done it out of college where it's with your boys. Right. And I've done it like by myself. So I've done it with girlfriends. I've done it with my fiance.
Right.
Done it with like more rich people, less rich people, and like different experiences, different rooms that you're in. So being able to see all those different things makes a difference. So
it does. And we talked about that too, in that like for me, I enjoy experiencing that myself, like the spectrum of that, but then also having a partner that has experienced at least that similar spectrum, because then they also learn to appreciate it in a similar way. Because for example, I think someone that's only experienced it in a luxury way can only do it that way. You know what I mean? Like right? Exactly. Like
that's kind of like the the term, just people that have trust fund kids.
100%. Yeah.
Definitely from Nebraska. My father's not Warren Buffett. But like kind of like a trust fund kid. So they only experience inside this like shell.
Yes. And it goes, I think it shows in people's like the way they approach life as well. I think you kind of see it in their mannerism.
For sure. It's interesting. I'll say one other thing that I feel like has like developed in me is just being around, so having a perspective of like every little thing, like being in LA, you're around a lot of different famous people and stuff, but for my job specifically, have always been around, and I think you can see how different people kind of live life, think about it, and that kind of makes like differences as well, right? Because like if I see somebody who's like super famous, doesn't bother me or anything, or I'm not thinking like, oh, I need to go see this person, 100%. Right? I think there's like, when you hit like a certain threshold, you just view everybody as people instead 100%. Of like hierarchies and stuff, which also is like another vertical that comes into play.
Yeah. I'm curious to reverse it in a way, like looking at it from a guy's perspective on women and their relationship and dating experiences. I don't know if you've ever heard like conversations through your fiance and like with her girlfriends, or just maybe from an observation standpoint. What would you say is something that you feel like women are kind of misunderstanding when it comes to like better understanding men and kind of like the dynamic with being able to show up as like a good or great partner, but also just learning to kind of like bridge the gap almost, right? Because I think again, a lot of the feedback loop for women are other women and men, same thing, right? So that's one of the big reasons I wanted to have you on the show, because I think like you are a really grounded person. We had a great conversation, and I think I love to expose other people to different perspectives. I think that's what helps bridge the gap.
For sure.
Yeah.
It's a great question. I'm thinking about it a couple different ways. But the first thing that comes to mind is, I think when you have a partner, which a lot of people won't see, they want to become each other's lives and they really lean into the other person. They kind of change. You really need to be in a relationship where you're the same before you were in the relationship as after, right? Yeah. So like you kind of live parallel lives,
right?
But you like can mesh together. I think that's huge. Like I was talking to my fiance, she has like, whatever her dreams and goals are, like she should do all those things, because otherwise she's not fulfilled. Just like the name of this podcast. So I think that's hugely important, where I think that's probably a maturity level on both sides, is when they're not ready to actually, you know, let another, they really want to become the person and kind of like intermix. Exactly. And they're missing like the key point. Like the only thing that no one else can make you happy.
Yes.
You can only make yourself happy. Yes. And that's the biggest thing out of all of it. Like if we weren't happy in a relationship, I think like day one when we started dating, it was like our conversation. We had two of our closest gay friends from Australia, and I just want to use this because one was my neighbor and the other was her neighbor, and she was always hanging around. I'm like, man, Austin, I gotta come hang out the next time. Like she's over because like she's super attractive. Yeah. And I remember we had a very conversation because we didn't want to. Like us four hung out all the time. Yes. And we're like, wow, we don't want to ruin this like whole friendship group. And we were like, no, I think we're mature enough. Like if something ever went wrong, we still can have the same friendship group. So I think that was another thing that made things easier. And I don't know if everyone could do that.
And I agree with that. And I think that's a sign of like, if you are at a certain maturity level and someone that you're potentially going to date or want to date might not hit that same maturity level, I think you'll notice that it causes more friction in being together, right? Because it'll show up in other places. But I think secondly, it's kind of an potential indicator of like misalignment, that maybe you aren't maybe like the best pair, whether it's at that time or just in general, you know? So I think that's something people gotta like internalize too, instead of like trying to fight the friction almost.
Exactly. I agree. And you have to know when to give and take, right? Like, if it's not correct, that takes like a big move. If you're gonna like step away from a relationship, it's gonna stink. No matter if you want to be with them or they don't, you know, whatever it is, it's gonna stink because you like have this lifestyle with them. And that's where it comes to like, no, your life is even with a partner, everything, your happiness is still comes within you. I think it changes with kids. I don't have kids yet, but I'm sure some things change there. So
I'm curious how you navigated cultural differences in your relationship, because she's from Brazil, right? And so I think that's something, you know, I experienced myself, and I think that's something I'm actually very well versed in, just dating men from different cultural backgrounds. And that's something that, I don't know, I'm sure some of my listeners will either come across at some point, especially if they're in a city like New York or LA or beyond the US, where it's, you know, diverse, and you might meet someone, but like what I'm sure you experience this, but in the sense where sometimes like communication styles are very different, or like your perception of whether you can talk to people in the beginning stage or not. Like like in American culture, there's like the exclusive and stuff like that in the beginning, right? And some people are dating around and some people aren't, but like that's something that I think comes with like cultural differences, and I'm curious to know what your experience is with that.
Well, I mean, first, I'll just say like my fiance wasn't my like first cultural. Okay, gotcha. And not saying I like just dated around a ton of different people, but had like quite a few different girlfriends from different ethnic backgrounds. So I've learned a lot through all those, even like girls that you haven't dated, just girls you kind of hung out with for a little bit and stuff. I would say it takes a little bit of time, because you need to learn like how their culture is, and you kind of have to respect it too. The biggest thing is respect, because you don't know how different things are handled in their culture compared to how you grew up, right? It goes back to, I mean, everything kind of goes to how they were even raised. Like, were they in a single parent home? Were they, you know, those things have a lot of differences, as well as just kind of the country and the norms of where they're from. So I've always just like been with an open mind. It's kind of funny because I'm very like chill person, like very, very relaxed. And Latinos are not.
Yes, they're definitely very different.
Which is kind of, I think it actually drives my fiance nuts, because she'll be like, really want to talk about something, and she's like fiery, and I'm just like very like calm about it. Like, no, it's not that big of a deal. But she'll even think something's not a big deal, but then it'll become a big deal depending on how I respond. But it's all about, she just wants me to be like more energized, more in
tune to less grounded.
Exactly. It's not coming from, she's like mad because I'm not where she comes from. It's more of like just elevated conversations. And you speak with different levels of volume.
Yeah.
I'll just tell you a quick story. I was on a work call maybe 4 weeks ago, and this girl I was on a call with, she knows, she's like, oh yeah, your fiance, she's like Brazilian.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh yeah, she's on the phone. Like this, it wasn't like an important call. So I was working from home. So I wasn't like, hey, be quiet or anything like that. And she's like just having a conversation with some of her girls. Yeah. And I was like, she's like, oh, do you speak Portuguese? I was like, yeah, I understand a lot of Portuguese. I speak a little bit.
Yeah.
And she's like, wow, well, their conversation sounds really intense. I was like, oh, no, it's really not. And she got all embarrassed. I was like, but it was just like so the delivery.
Funny. That's true.
How someone speaks. So it's like things you just have to learn and
like learn to understand. Exactly. What's your number one tip if you had to give anyone that maybe it's like their first time experiencing like cultural, differences in a new relationship? Mm-hmm. What's your number one tip?
Yeah, I would say, just try to put yourself in their shoes.
That's a good one.
I don't even know if it matters the culture either.
Yeah.
Like you could be the same.
I agree that.
Just put yourself in their shoes. Yeah. I think if you can look through the lens how they're looking at something, mm-hmm. agree or not disagree, whatever, mm-hmm. but just try to make the conscious effort to put yourself in their shoes. Yeah. Even if you don't agree with what they're trying to say. Yeah. Just try to view. And then there's probably a reason you can pinpoint back another way.
No, that's huge. And I did that too when it came to like dating other guys from different cultural backgrounds. Like for me, once I understood in like, for example, some guys I dated in the past were from Russia or Russian. Mm-hmm. And their dating approach is definitely more monogamous, or at least like the older ones, like more monogamous. Like they don't have any kind of talking phase or exclusive phase, and so there was a little bit of conflict with that at first. And I think once I understood, well, for them, they're not used to that. I was very compassionate and understanding, and I think that is such a good practice in general, right? Regardless of cultural differences, but I think that definitely comes as a huge help when you have to learn to understand, they didn't know, and you didn't know either, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it's like being compassionate for one another.
Exactly. Yeah. Completely agree.
What about healthy relationship patterns that you've learned? Like if you had to leave us with like 2 or 3 strong, healthy relationship habits that you've implemented and maybe you've learned from other people or you just learned from your own experiences, what would you say? Because I feel like for your age and being in a city like New York at 31 and, engaged mm-hmm. and actually in a solid relationship, I think that's not as common, right? I think you know that. So sure. I'm super curious if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah. All right. I got 2 things that come to my mind.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one is, and I heard this, I don't know, a couple weeks back, but I think it was on a podcast, and it was just like, love is time. So like, love is just putting the time in. Yeah. So if no matter what, if you want love to work, all those things, you have to put the time in. Right. So whatever that is, whatever that time is, and however they value that, you can't just tell someone you love them without giving them your time. Mm-hmm. So you got to put the time in, do the work. The other thing is go experience things together. Because if you're not like constantly growing and evolving and going through different situations, one of you is going to want to go grow and evolve, right? We're humans. We want to like continue to grow and evolve. Right. And I think if you can do that together, it's very special. And back to your like solo travel things, I remember I was in Turkey, actually. I was by myself, and I remember kind of experiencing something. It's kind of a wild story, and that's for another time. But at the same time, I had done quite a bit of solo traveling, and I was like, it is better just like having someone that's like totally parallel path with you. Totally. Like no matter how you say like solo travel is the best and it's awesome.
I agree.
Now, when you have someone that you like love, you put time in together, it's definitely
I agree. I had that realization in Europe in my when I was in Italy and London recently, like a couple months ago, I had that realization too.
It's better just being able, you're gonna have a memory that just like lasts a little longer, or lasts a lifetime a little longer. It's just different, like experiencing something with a stranger is awesome, right? You might not ever talk to that person again, and not saying you need to relive everything that you go through, right? But I think it makes experiences stick with you a little longer. When you're doing it out of love with someone that you love. Yeah. And
especially when that person shares the same values as you or similar values and personal vision, like you said, the parallel path.
Yeah, exactly.
It hits different.
It does. It's way different.
Yeah. Okay, well, last 2 questions. Okay. One being around book recommendations. I'm super curious. I feel like, or podcast recommendations too, but I feel like you're definitely, again, always kind of working on yourself. You're super grounded, good energy, and I'm sure there's certain content you've consumed in the past that helped you get there. So I'm curious.
No, great question. So growing up, I hated to read.
Okay.
I hated to read. Yeah. And I think it was just like, I don't really care to read this story when I can just watch a movie about it, right? But I would say the books that I picked up that I actually enjoyed, this is like outside of, I probably was maybe my senior year of college and started to like, and I hate this term, self-help books. Self-help books. They need a better
I know.
term
genre
for that.
term.
Yeah, a better genre. But I was really like, oh wow, this is great stuff. And I started like reading, and then audiobooks came out and I was like, wow, Audible, that changed everything. And now I'm like huge subscriber to Audible. But I also listen to like podcasts. And I try to, I'm not like podcast every single day type of person, but I know when I need it and when I don't. Right? Like I'm constantly always reading like 1 or 2 different books on Audible. Consciously I'll do it probably like 2 to 3 times a week. I'll listen to a book when I'm at the gym on a run. But books that I would recommend, wow. I mean, I love like Jay Shetty's podcast. I think it's great. Tom Impact Theory. Tom
yes,
Billy.
I know him. Yeah.
I think some of them, sometimes it's like very cheesy.
Yeah.
Right? And that kind of, I cringe every once in a while on some of the stuff. But like, I just want to push the needle. And it's kind of one of those things, like even though you hear something once, it's not going to stick with you.
Right.
So you have to like always listen and kind of do things. I think one book that I think about that I read every year is The 4 Agreements. Right?
So and 2 other guests have said that before on my show. Okay, interesting.
I think there's other books that I like that I really enjoy way more.
Yeah.
But I think the like main focus of those books really every year I try to like, all right, I'm caring way too much about what other people think.
Interesting.
I need to like go back into this book.
Okay.
So, off the top of my head, I don't know.
4 Agreements.
I'll give you that one.
Yeah, that's a good one. It seems like certain people like that to bring back as like a consistent book to like reread.
Yeah, correct. And that's like all the other self-help books. I feel like, from the Mel Robbins to the David Goggins, all these, like I've read all these different books that all say the same thing, just different. But nothing's like stuck with me like, oh, I need to do it again. And do it again. And the 4 Agreements I do. I'm like, all right, I need to run this one back.
Ooh, that's a good one. Okay, well, of course, we'll include that in the show notes and our Instagram stories. We have a little highlight where we have like guest recommendations. So we always include the books. But okay, well, last question, and something I ask every guest on the show. But in reflection of, your personal development and your relationship with your fiance and everything you've experienced in work and life, what would you say ultimately fulfills you?
Great question. Great question.
The deepest question of all.
Yeah, I think it's this underlying go to like live, right? And experience. And yeah, that's what I would say. It's more about being able to experience more. Like I want to go everywhere in the world. I want to experience everything. I used to, when I was younger, I was like, oh, I got to try everything once. Right? But yeah, I would say it's like this underlying feeling that I just want to continue to live, right? And to grow. I think that's probably my deepest fear is like I've looked at, even where I come from in the Midwest, it's very, kind of feels like people stop living. Right. They get married very young. They have a couple kids and then they're just like recycling, copy paste, a lot of people like drink a lot. And that's where you see those like escapes because they stopped being a kid. And I feel like I'm a huge kid and a really big kid. And anytime I go somewhere, I like to feel like seeing something for the first time. Coming back when I landed in New York, I took my dog for a walk this morning. I'm like, holy shit. So we live in a movie. Like, this is insane, And like, no matter, every time you go somewhere, you come back, you feel those appreciations for everywhere you go. So
for
that's
sure.
what I'd say.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, I like that. No, Aaron, I feel like you're just so grounded and you just always have positive energy to share. Allie and I were talking about this yesterday too. We're like, she's like, he's just gonna be a great guest because he's just always great energy. So
it's probably like just smiling all the time.
Yeah. Like, just like always calm, grounded, good energy.
Thank you.
So
yeah. Appreciate that.
I appreciate you coming on. Where can everyone find you and, keep up with what you're up to on social media?
No, for sure. I mean, I'm on Instagram. I'm on everything. I think my handle is like the same across everything. And it's just like Aaron__Luther.
Okay. Awesome.
So yeah, feel free. I'm always posting stuff, doing wild things. Yeah. Reels and everything's made it more exciting because you can be more detailed. Yeah. And I wouldn't say I'm like an influencer or anything like that, but I think I like tell a cool story. Yeah. You know, my friends are always like, yo, your content's amazing from Brazil, like, or in Europe or wherever you are. Yeah. Keep posting. And I'm just trying to give like a real perspective that I see the art inside of whatever I'm doing.
That's super awesome. Yeah. Yay. Well, thank you for coming on, Aaron. This was great. And I think a lot of listeners will really cherish the male perspective you've given.
Yeah. So awesome. Hopefully that was helpful. Yeah. And I'm sure like any other questions anyone could ask away. So I'm an open book.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.